So let me share my screen with you, and then maybe we can start the class today. So I hope this is visible to you, my screen.
Yes, sir.
Okay, great.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay, great. So let us start from the same slide. From the same slide where we left yesterday. Or in fact, before that, let me go back to the things that we covered in the previous lecture. So in the previous lecture, we talked about the digital electronics era, that is how it started. So we talked about, I think, magnetic relays, and we found its application in railways, and then we talked about the vacuum tubes, and we understood that the problem with the vacuum tube was that power dissipation and size, they were huge. And then we talked about the first computer, that is electronic computer, ENIAC and UNIVAC, which were made from this vacuum tubes, but they were not successful. And then we also talked about the transistor revolution. I hope my voice is clear.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes,
Yes,
sir.
sir.
Yeah, so then we talked about the transistor revolution, and then we talked about that the MOSFET came before the BJT, that is bipolar transistor, but because there were some issues with the lack of understanding of how the gate behaves on bias and many other device physics, so it could not take up during that time. So BJT got popularity. And then we also talked about the first integrated circuits, which were created by Motorola and which were made in TTL technology. ECL was developed earlier than TTL, but TTL had an advantage of integration density was very high, so people started using this TTL. We talked about all this, and then we also talked about MOS device issues that prevented the MOSFETs to become, in fact, BJT became more popular than MOSFET because of these issues. And we talked about the first microprocessor released by Intel, and it had 1,000 transistors, and all these transistors were handcrafted. And then we also talked about what were the problems with NMOS only and PMOS only logic. And then finally, we saw an hierarchical approach by which this Intel Pentium Micro 4 processor was released. And then we also talked about few other existing technologies apart from silicon technology, that is gallium arsenide, silicon, germanium, and other superconducting technologies. But we found that the role of these technologies were very limited. Okay. Now let us come on to this slide, which is about a scientist. He was, maybe let me zoom my screen. Yeah. So let us talk about this law, Moore's law, which was given by this scientist at Intel, right? So his name was Gordon Moore. So he was a employee. He was an employee at Intel, the same Intel which produces the microprocessors. So in 1965, based on his observations, he gave this prediction. Okay, and his prediction was that the number of transistors, okay, so the number of transistors on a chip will double every 18 to 24 months, right? So this was his prediction based on his observations at Intel, that the number of transistors on a chip will get doubled every 18 to 24 months. Yeah, it was a very amazing vision, which is still in practice. The semiconductor manufacturing companies, they have seen that this vision which was given by him, that is number of transistors will double in every 18 to 24 months. So this is true even today, right? So he also made a prediction that the semiconductor technology will double its effectiveness every 18 months. Yeah, so obviously when number of transistors are doubling, so obviously the chip functionality will also increase. So effectiveness of this technology will double every 18 months. That is, chip functionality will become more higher. It will increase, and it will increase with the number of transistors. Number of transistors will double, or number of components will also increase. So chip functionality will also increase. And after his vision, we have seen that the integration density, okay, that is the number of components or the number of transistors which can be incorporated on a chip. So this integration density and performance of ICs, so they have gone through an astounding revolution in the last couple of decades. Okay. So we have seen how things evolved from first microprocessor which had only 1,000 transistors to an era which is existing today, that is when we have billions or trillions of transistors on microprocessor. Yeah? So this is only possible by the high integration density, and this high integration density has to be supported by some manufacturing process. So not just integration density, not just the technology, but manufacturing process has also evolved with time. Okay? So there had been a revolution earlier also, and today also we see that there is the same revolution going on. That is how to increase the number of components and how to increase the functionality of the same chip, right? So the chip area, we are not talking about the chip area so far. So chip area, you will find that has not doubled. Yeah? With the number of transistors, you will see that chip area, that is not doubling. Okay? But yes, the functionality and the effectiveness, okay, so that is actually doubling, or maybe increasing at a very high rapid rate. So let us verify this Moore's law in this picture. So this picture represents transistor counts. Okay, so transistor counts are present here on the y-axis. So this is in 1,000. So for example, if I say 10 here, so 10 means 10,000 transistors here. Okay, and on the x-axis we have the time, right? So time in terms of number of years passed. So if you start by, let's say, this point when 8086 was existing, so maybe it is somewhere around, let's say, 1977, okay, 78, or let us say. So in 1978 we had let's say 8086 microprocessor, and this microprocessor may be having somewhere around let's say 12,000. Yeah, so 12,000 transistors, right? 12,000 transistors in 1978. Okay. And then you have the other microprocessors also coming up. Okay. With the time, you see that other microprocessors are coming up, and all these microprocessors, we see that the number of transistors are growing. Okay. In fact, Moore also said that number of transistors will grow exponentially. So some sort of exponential rise in number of transistors you will notice here. So for example, if you see this Pentium processors, yeah, Pentium 1. So it had somewhere around, you have, this is 10 million, right? 100,000. So this is 10 million transistors now. So this was in 1990, maybe 3 or 4, right? So 1993 or 4, you had 10 million transistors. Then this trend is continuously increasing, and by the year 2010 we had 1 billion transistors on the microprocessor. In fact, today we have more than that. Trillion transistor microprocessor is also proposed. So I'll show you the name of that microprocessor and which company has proposed those trillion transistor based microprocessor. Yeah? But yes, the Moore law or Moore's vision can be verified here. That is, number of transistors are continuously growing, right? Exponentially growing with time. Now you will also find that when the chip functionality or the functionality of the system is increasing, then demand for memory, so that also goes up, right? So when you have you want higher end systems, that is systems which can perform at a very high speed, or high end systems. So with those high-end systems, the memory requirement also goes up. Okay, so here is the data of memory requirement, that is on y-axis you will see number of bits per chip. Okay? And on x-axis again you have time scale. So number of bits per chip. So let us start from here. That is a page. So if you have a one full page full of text, so that is somewhere around 64 kilobits. The size of that one full page of text is somewhere around 64 KB. And you see that an encyclopedia CD, which is somewhere around 2 hours of audio and video. Yeah, so that is somewhere around 1 GB. Okay, so this was possible in maybe let's say year 2000. Okay? So in 2000 we had an encyclopedia CD which contains both audio and video for 2.5 hours. So that size is somewhere around 1 GB. So from KB era to GB era, right? So the memory density, that is number of bits per chip, that has increased to a very large extent in the past 2 decades, from 1980 to let's say 2000. So 2 decades, that is 20 years. The memory requirement has gone up, very high. Yeah? So in fact, I remember that when I was in BTech in during 2002, so I purchased my first computer in 1999. So that time it was a Celeron 500 megahertz processor. Yeah? So you might not have, I think, heard about the name of this microprocessor. So it was released before Pentium. So before Pentiums were existing, there was Celeron microprocessor. So I purchased that time Celeron microprocessor, and I think the overall cost of my computer was somewhere around 40,000 rupees. And the memory in that computer was only 64 MB, right? So 64 MB, you see here it's lying, and this is 64 MB was released somewhere around maybe 1994 or so, and I purchased it in 1999. 64 MB RAM was there in my PC. And today, if we talk about your PCs and laptops, so they might be having more than, I think, 4 GB RAM, right? So 4 GB, if you look here, this point, 4 GB. So somewhere around 2004, the memory requirement, in fact, in some high-end processors, memory was somewhere around 4 GB. Today, all systems, I think, have 8 GB RAMs. Earlier, during that time when I purchased my computer, I think that time the computers not even supported more than, I think, 128 MB RAM. So 64 MB RAM I purchased that time, and I think 128 MB RAM was the maximum RAM that one can purchase at that time, right? So imagine that how things have changed with this memory. So memory requirement has increased to a very large extent, and in fact you will find that this memory density, this has increased by more than 1,000 folds, right? More than 1,000 folds it has increased since 1970, right? So 64 KB to 64 MB, so it is still 1,000 here. Yeah? More than 1,000 fold it has increased in just let's say 1 decade. Yeah? In 10 years it has increased, and this memory requirement will keep on increasing with time. If the systems are more advanced, more high-end systems are produced with more functionality, memory requirement will also grow up. And one very important and interesting fact I would like to share with you is that at that time I used to connect my PC to my internet, right? So internet connectivity was possible, and today you will find that this Firefox or whatever browser you're using, so they are even consuming more than 128 MB, right? So earlier I had just 64 MB RAM, which was for the entire system. Okay. Now, if we look at the Moore's law in microprocessors, okay, so let us talk about the transistor count once again. And this time the transistor count is presented in the y-axis in millions transistors. So if I say 0.001, so that means 0.001 million transistor, right? So this point is 10 million transistor. Okay. So let's start from here, maybe 486. Right? So this was produced in 1990, right? Intel 486 microprocessor, and it had 1 million transistor. Okay, and let's say after 2 years, what was the status? Right, 19. This is not 2, I think. Maybe 2 will lie somewhere here. Yeah, this is 2. So during 1992, that is after 2 years, we were somewhere here. That is maybe somewhere around 3 to 4. Yeah. So from 1 million to maybe let's say 3 million transistors in just 2 years. Okay. So from 1 million to 3 million transistors in just 2 years. Okay. So that is what Moore predicted. That is, number of transistors will double every 18 to 24 months. Okay. So we have a data for 8085 microprocessor also, which I think you might have used in your microprocessor lab in BTech program. So 8085, 8086, both I think you might have used. And this 8085 had somewhere around 10,000 transistors. Right? 8086 also somewhere around 15,000 transistors. Okay. And then you have Pentium 4 or 6, which has somewhere around 10 million transistors. Okay. So from 10,000 transistors to 10 million transistors. Okay. In how many years? Let us say this is in 1975 and this is, let's say, 1995. So in 20 years, from 10,000 to 10 million transistors. So imagine. So this was a very great vision, and he was a great visionary, Moore, and his prediction was, excellent. Yeah, excellent prediction he made. Now, if you go by this Moore law, then you will find that by the year 2000, maybe 20 or maybe more than that, let's say 2030, the transistor count will be very high, obviously. Yeah, let's say 2030 if we talk about. So what can be the transistor count? So transistor count is going exponentially, obviously. But now we find that there is a limit. Now, I mean, a saturation has come where, it's very hard to put on more components on the chip. Okay? So many effects are coming into picture. So somewhat it has slowed down the transistor count, the increase in transistor count. So that has slowed down somewhat. And the scientists or maybe the researchers, they are continuously finding ways to, keep in line with the Moore's law. That is to find out ways how to increase the number of components. Okay, so there are many methods we will talk about in this course, how to increase the transistor count, how to increase the integration density. So we'll talk about those methods in this course as well. Yeah, so the growth is somewhere around two times in 1.96 years. Yeah, from this data you will find that the growth is somewhere around two times, that is doubling in somewhere around 1.96 years. And transistors on lead microprocessors, they double every 2 years. Now let me give you a small data or update, you can call, on the existing microprocessors and their transistor count, right? So we have a microprocessor which has 1.2 trillion transistors, which was released in 2019 by Cerebras Systems. So Cerebras Systems is a US-based startup company. So they have released a microprocessor which has trillion of transistors, right? Then in 2019 only, you will find that there was another chip which was again invented by this Cerebra. They have produced this chip which has 2.6 trillion MOSFETs. So here they had 1.2 million. Now they have 2.6 trillion MOSFETs manufactured using TSMC's 7 nanometer FinFET process, right? Not CMOS process, sorry, not MOSFET, it's a FinFET process. Okay? And the technology is 7 nanometers. Okay? So 7 nanometer, when I say technology, so that means the channel length or the gate length of your MOSFET. So 7 nanometer here means that the gate length or the channel length of your MOSFET is 7 nanometer. Okay? So TSMC, so this is a semiconductor manufacturing company. I think the full form of this TSMC is Taiwan Semiconductor Manufacturing Company. It's a leading semiconductor manufacturing company. Okay. Then in 2019, you will find that AMD. So AMD is a company which produces microprocessors. So AMD Zen 2 based EPIC Rome. So it's a 3D IC. So it says that they produced a 3D IC again using the same TSMC 7 nanometer FinFET semiconductor manufacturing process, and this chip had 39.54 billion MOSFETs. Okay. So in 2019, you had 39.54 billion MOSFETs on this AMD Zen 2 chip, which was produced by using TSMC technology, 7 nanometer technology, FinFET technology. Then if we talk about 2020, okay, and if we talk about the graphical processing unit, that is GPU, many of the advanced high-end systems have GPUs. Your laptops also might have GPUs on their motherboards. So in 2020, this NVIDIA is a very popular company. They make graphic cards. So NVIDIA produced a GPU which had 54 billion MOSFETs. Okay? Again using TSMC's 7 nanometer process. Okay? So 7 nanometer here means, as I said, the channel length, or maybe let us talk about what is this channel length. You might be knowing, I understand, but let us talk about this once again. What is this channel length? So when I say a technology, that is 7 nanometer technology, if I say, so 7 nanometer here means the channel length or the gate length, right? So I say channel length or the gate length refers to 7 nanometer technology. That is, you have a MOSFET here, let's say. Okay. Let us say we have a MOSFET, and then we have source and drain diffusion region. So I have N plus as source and drain, and plus here means it's heavily doped. Okay. And then I have a P-type substrate here. Okay. So this is my N-type MOSFET, and then I have a gate over here. In fact, let us say we have first an insulator, which is maybe silicon dioxide, and then we have a polysilicon gate, right? So this is my polysilicon gate. Okay. So this gate has a length. Okay. So this is 7 nanometer. Okay. And this channel length is actually the technology. So when I say 7 nanometer technology, so it means, or maybe let us draw a 3D picture of this and then try to understand what is this channel length. So let us draw a 3D picture of the same MOSFET. So let me try to draw a 3D picture for you. So let us say this is my MOSFET, a 3D picture. And then let us find out this channel, and let's say this is my source and drain diffusion region. So the channel looks very big. It is not that much big. Okay. So this is my source and drain diffusion regions on the 3D picture. Okay, so this is N plus here again, and this is also N plus. Now channel is existing over here. Okay. So this is my channel. Okay. Channel length. Let me say, this is my length or channel length from here to here. Here is my gate. Okay. This portion is my gate, entire this one. Okay. And the channel width. Oh, where is it? Oh, that's gone, I think. Yeah, so that was channel length. So let us not go into that again. So maybe during this course we'll talk about them later on. Okay. So yeah, so the 2020 we saw a GPU from NVIDIA which had 54 billion MOSFETs, and it was using 7 nanometer process from TSMC. And then you will also find that in 2019 Samsung, okay, Samsung, they came up with a flash memory chip. Okay, it was a NAND flash memory chip, and it had 2 trillion floating gate MOSFETs. Okay. So 2 trillion floating gate MOSFETs were there. Okay. And it was a memory chip, released by Samsung in 2019. Okay? So we are living in an era where the number of transistors are too high. Maybe billion and also trillion transistor chip exists. Okay? And here you will find that they are using 3D stack technology. Right? So currently, whatever maximum number of chips that are prepared, so they are not 3D chip, but yes, 3D means here that you have connected together. So one on top of one wafer, you have another wafer. Okay, so the two wafers are separated out. Maybe let me draw a picture over here to say what is 3D. So let us say what is 3D. Yeah, so let us talk about this 3D thing. Maybe yeah. So in 3D, you will find that you have one wafer, okay? So where you will have your integrated circuit. Okay, then on top of it, you will have another wafer. Okay? Then maybe another wafer. Yeah? So that way the wafers are stacked. That is, each wafer has obviously, or die in fact, each dies have these ICs. Integrated circuits are present on each die here or wafer. Okay? And then in between these dies which are having ICs, you have some insulation, some sort of insulation is present in between each wafer. So let's say my wafer 1 is sitting down, and then I have an insulation here, okay, some dielectric, and then another wafer sits on top of it, and then you have another insulation layer here. Okay. So this way, stacked ICs or 3D ICs can be manufactured. Okay, and to have interconnection between these, you have the interconnections by using vias. So vias are used for interconnecting two layers. So you have vias, and then through these vias, the two ICs can be connected. Okay. The two wafers which are stacked can be connected. So let us call this is via contact. Okay. All have via contacts. Through via contacts, one can connect these two ICs. Okay. So this is called 3D kind of technology by which you stack the wafers on top of each other. Now let's come on to this important aspect, the die size, right? So with time we see that the die size doesn't increase too much, though the number of transistors are increasing rapidly, but we see that the die size, so that doesn't grows up not to a very large extent. So you see the data here is presented on the y-axis. You see that die size is mentioned, so this is in millimeters. Okay, and on the x-axis again you have time scale. So you will see that the die size is not increasing exponentially. Die size is not doubling, though the number of transistors were doubling. It was an exponential rise like this. Okay, but the die size is showing some other trend, so the die size is not increasing much. Yeah? So this is the trend for die size, that is this trend, and this was the trend for the number of transistors count. Yeah? The number of transistors were increasing exponentially, but die size is not increasing exponentially. So yeah, so number of transistors were increasing exponentially. So die size only grows by 7% per year. Or maybe twice, it becomes twice in 10 years. Okay, the die size doubles in 10 years, but number of transistors, they double in every 2 years. So the die size doesn't grow much, and that is only possible because of this scaling thing, that is the device dimensions are being continuously shrink down, and that is why we are able to accommodate more number of transistors, more number of functions and components on the same chip, or maybe with just 7% or maybe 14% growth per 2 years, right? Yeah, so the die size grows 14% to satisfy Moore's law. Okay? So the increase in die size is just 14% to satisfy Moore's law. Moore's law said that the number of transistors will double every 2 years. So that means in 2 years the die size will grow only 14%. It will not double, right? So that is how the the cost of the chip doesn't goes up too much. Otherwise, if the die size would also have grown to the same speed, then the cost of the IC would have become very much higher. Now you will also, in fact, we had discussed about this frequency issue, that is the speed of your microprocessor. Okay. So on the y-axis again, you will find we have a presentation of frequency, and this time it is in megahertz. So frequency of microprocessor, or maybe frequency of an integrated circuit. And on x-axis again you have time scale. So you see here that the frequency is also increasing with time. Yeah? With the complexity, the frequency is also increasing. The frequency, that is speed of the microprocessors. Okay? So earlier, for example, 8080. Okay? So that used to perform maybe at 2 megahertz, let's say 2 megahertz clock frequency in 8080, and then in 8085 it increased to maybe 5 or 6 megahertz, and then P6 Pentium 6 here. So it was somewhere around maybe 500 megahertz also is possible for Pentium processors. Okay. So the trend shows us that the frequency doubles every 2 years. Okay. The trend was that frequency was doubling every 2 years till maybe, let's say, the year 2000. Okay. But after this, if this way the frequency had to increase, that is every 2 years, then it was actually a bottleneck, as we discussed, that while the frequency was increasing, the heat dissipated by the chip was also increasing. That is, chips were becoming hot and they were burning. So that is why we discussed that Intel and AMD and other semiconductor manufacturing companies, they stopped increasing speed, but then they started thinking about other methods to increase the system performance, and those methods were multi-threading, multitasking, and multiprocessing, which involves the use of more than one cores, that is more than one processors on the same chip, right? So by that technique, they increase the system performance instead of increasing the frequency of the system. Okay? Now, to justify this point, let us talk about some of the microprocessors and their frequencies. Right? So these are advanced microprocessors, and you will find that number one is AMD FX9590. So this was released in 2013, and it has 8 cores, and each core has one thread. So it has 8 threads. Okay? So it's a 8-core, 8-thread processor, and the maximum clock frequency is 4.7 gigahertz. Okay, on 8 cores, and 5 gigahertz if you involve threading also into picture. Okay? So you start using threading also, then, or multi-threading, you can achieve a frequency of 5 gigahertz. Okay? Similarly, Intel i9 processor. Yeah, you might have i7, I think, in your laptop. Even my laptop also has a i7 microprocessor. So Intel i9 microprocessor that was released in 2018. It has 8 cores and 16 threads. So that means in this processor you have 2 threads per core, right? So 2 threads are there. 2 threads are there per core. Okay. So every core has 2 threads. So there are 8 cores. So that means 16 threads are there. Now the performance on 8 core is 3.6 gigahertz. And if you use the concept of threading, that is, you involve these 16 threads also, then the performance can be raised to 5 gigahertz. Yeah? 3.6 to 5 gigahertz just by threading. Right? So threading makes you feel that you are working on a 5 gigahertz processor. Similarly, IBM. Okay? So this is also a semiconductor manufacturing company. So in 2012, they came up with this microprocessor which had 6 cores and 6 threads. Okay? and the frequency of operation was somewhere around 5.5 gigahertz. So as I said that, and this is not a commercial processor. You will not find this processor anywhere now. Okay. So we discussed earlier that you will not find any processor in the market which has clock frequency or speed of more than 5 or 6 gigahertz. Okay. So the speed is limited, and the limit is imposed because of the heat dissipation in the chip, okay, which was going up very high. So that's why the companies decided to not increase the frequencies further, and rather they came up with the concept of threading. So they improved the architecture of microprocessor basically. So threading and multiprocessing, multi-core. So these are the improvements in the architectures of the microprocessors. Okay. Yeah. So power dissipation, as we were talking, that the power dissipation has also gone up very high. So with frequency, obviously you will see an increase in power dissipation. Yeah? So here you see that all these processors from 4004 to 8008 to maybe Pentiums, maybe today we have i7 and i8. So the frequency has been continuously increasing till maybe let's say 2002 or 5. The frequency was continuously increasing. Yeah, with frequency, we also see that power dissipation is also increasing. Yeah, here we see that power dissipation is also increasing with frequency. All these microprocessors, we see that frequency increases, so power dissipation also increases. On the y-axis, you have power dissipation, that is power dissipated in watts. Okay. So, for example, Pentium microprocessors, they have a power dissipation of somewhere around 100 watts, right? So by the year it was 2000, maybe 2004 or 5, 100 or 150 watts were produced. In fact, my system also had a heat sink of somewhere around, the rating was somewhere around 150 watts. I have another desktop PC. In fact, it is a server PC. So it has AMD Opteron processor, 2 physical processors, that is 2 separate slots for microprocessor in the motherboard. Yeah. So normally you will find that there is 1 slot for microprocessor, but I have a motherboard which has 2 separate slots for 2 separate processors, right? So that has a power dissipation of 150 watts for each processor. So I have 2 heat sinks in that server. Okay. Yeah, so heat sink is a huge problem, as we discussed. So power is continuously increasing, so we cannot think about increasing frequency to anymore. So that's why the other architectures have come with threading and multiprocessing into picture, right, to increase the system's performance. And the power will obviously be a major problem. In fact, it has been understood by now. So I have a data till only 2008. Okay, so it says that power could have been somewhere around 18 kilowatts. So that was almost impossible to handle, impossible to make heat sinks which can dissipate this much amount of power dissipation. Yeah? That is, heat generation will also be equivalent to how much power dissipation we have. So power delivery and dissipation would have become an issue, but now those issues have been sorted out. We are not increasing frequency anymore. Okay. And then the power density, yeah, that is, which is given in terms of power dissipation per unit area. That is power, that is watts per centimeter square is the unit. So that is also continuously growing up with time. And some analogy to these power dissipations are also presented here. So for example, in the range of somewhere around maybe 10 to 50 watts. So that is the temperature of, or the power dissipation of at the surface of a hot plate. So similarly, 100, not 100, maybe let's say somewhere around 200 watts per centimeter square. So that is the power density or power dissipated at the surface of a nuclear reactor. Similarly, if we talk about a rocket nozzle, so it has somewhere around 1000 watts per centimeter square power density, or power dissipation per centimeter square area. So we cannot, afford these numbers. So obviously, one has to, if one has to bring down these numbers, one has to think about, not increasing frequency. But yes, since the system performance is in high demand. Everybody wants a system with high performance. So to increase the performance, various other architectures were released. Now this power dissipation or heat dissipation is not a problem with just microprocessors. The same problem exists for cell phones also, the handheld devices that we use. And imagine if the cell phones power consumption is very high. So obviously nobody would like to use a phone which has a very high power dissipation. At least we want the cell phone the battery to last for at least one full day. And the cell phones have, that's why the cell phones have separate power management units. Okay? So the companies which are manufacturing these cell phones, they have a separate research and development center for managing power, right? So they have a separate power management block or unit in their cell phones which will manage the power consumed and also the heat dissipated. Nobody wants a phone that gets very hot. Phone which can burn your hand. Who will buy? Nobody. And if you look at the growth in the shipping of the phone, that is phones produced and shipped to the global market, so that is continuously increasing. It's doubling somewhere around. From 1996 to 2000, I have a data, maybe till 2020 it has grown up by I think 3 or 4 times. So earlier, for example, in 1996 the shipping was somewhere around 48 million was shipped per year, and then it has increased to 86 million, then 162. It is doubling by every year, right? So I think I'll stop here, and then maybe on Monday we'll talk about these challenges in digital design, right? And we'll continue from here. I think the time is also over. Yeah, our time is over. So we'll stop here, and if you have any queries, then maybe you can ask your queries now. And if you have no queries, then maybe we can then disconnect. Yeah, so if you have any queries, please ask. I hope the audio was okay today.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, because I was using, I think, high-speed local area network connection. Yes, I was using, so that's why things were okay. Yeah, so if you have any questions, then please ask.
Hello, sir.
Yeah, please.
Sir, I want to know what is threading.
So threading means the same program you are, you're dividing the same program into parts, and then those parts are separately run on either one processor or on many processors, right? So for example, your program can be divided into 4 or 5 parts, okay? And then those 4 or 5 parts can be considered as separate tasks, and those separate tasks can be run either on single processor or maybe on multi-processors. So that actually increases the speed of your program. So for example, a long time back, when internet was in picture, so when we used to open the web page, we found that some portion of the web page that came early, and some other portions of the web page, they came very late, right? So for example, if I open some page on the web page, I found that the picture at the bottom that appears earlier than the picture which should have come earlier, because it was present at the top. So that is only possible because of threading, because the entire web page or the program was divided into many parts. So all those tasks were executed separately. Some tasks completed or finished early, and some completed after that. So the system's performance can be increased by this threading concept.
Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, if you have any other queries, please ask, or otherwise let us end the meeting.
Sir, what is the size of a die, sir?
Size of a die. So today I think it's somewhere around you will find 3 millimeter square by 3 millimeter square dies also. So earlier, long time back, maybe 1 decade or 2 decades back, it was somewhere around 1.25 to 1.25 millimeter square. So depending upon your circuit, the die size can be utilized. If you have a bigger circuit, die size will be more. Smaller circuit, the die size can be less.
Okay, sir. Thank you, sir.
Yeah. If you have any other query, then you can ask. Otherwise, you can disconnect. So that depends on. I hope that there are no queries from your side. Looks like.
Sir, I have a simple question.
Yeah, please ask. Sankeet, please ask.
Sir, how many watts of power will affect humans? Means we are
Yeah.
means we are using phone, no, sir. It means if the power is more, it affects mostly human, no.
Yeah. So you,
How
I
many?
think, yeah, you want to know how much heat.
Yes, sir.
Right. Okay. So if you remember, a long time back we had 60 watt or 40 watt bulbs in the market, 100 watt bulbs and 200 watt bulbs also. So the temperature was, unbearable. You cannot touch the 40 watt bulb also, right?
Okay, sir.
Yeah. So depending on that, you will, in fact, if you try to touch your laptop adapter, so that is somewhere around 40 or 30 watts it consumes. So imagine how much heat that
Okay,
30
sir.
watt system is producing. Is it bearable to you or not? So that again depends upon humans. How much heat you can bear. Okay.
Okay, sir.
Yeah.
Sir, if my phone charging is around 1 or 2%, let us say,
Okay.
so it produces more power, sir. Like it generates more heat, sir, as compared to when my phone charging is around 90% or so.
I don't think that it has any relationship to the charging, the amount of charge. I think it depends upon the number of functions that your phone is performing. I mean, how many applications you have opened on your phone. So that depends on, yeah. So number of applications running on your phone. So that contributes to power dissipation, that is the battery consumption, and also the heat production.
Okay, sir. Understood. Thank you.
Yeah.
Excuse me, sir.
Yeah, please ask, Ganesh.
Sir, in one of the slides you have shown that 7 nanometer TSMC manufacturing process, sir.
Okay.
Sir, in that the manufacturing process there is mentioned FinFET, sir.
Okay.
But the transistors they have manufactured, there are MOSFETs, 2.6 billion MOSFETs like that.
Okay.
Sir, what is the difference, sir? Like here manufacturing process is FinFET, then transistors and MOSFETs.
Yeah, we have to understand the difference between MOSFET and FinFET. Okay. So the technology is 7 nanometer FinFET. So obviously you don't have the normal MOSFETs there. Yeah? FinFET have raised source and drain contacts. So there is no virtual channel which is created by the gate, right? So here in FinFETs, the operation is different. That is, you create a channel by, or you deplete the source and drain region by the work function difference between the gate material and the source and drain material. Okay, and then you apply a gate to again create that channel in the source and drain, and that's how the current flows. So the architecture is different, so technology is also different. Okay, so MOS technology, there are like CMOS where you have both NMOS and PMOS, and then there is FinFET technology where you don't use normal MOSFET, but you use FinFETs. Okay, so it is not. There might be a mistake there. So they have used FinFET. So it is if it is a 7 nanometer FinFET, so obviously FinFETs are used, not normal MOSFETs.
Okay, sir.
Yeah. So I think we can end this meeting. Okay.